Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Stripology podcast. I'm Wendy, your host, and today I'm so excited and grateful to have a special guest here. You might be following her already on Instagram. She goes by the Spicy Investor, and I'm really excited to welcome the Spicy Investor here. So thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome. So all the way from the US. Yeah, I really love your content and find it super inspiring and also super relatable because you're from the stripping industry and
Yeah.
now you're creating a life on your terms through your passion, which is investing. So, yeah, if you would be so kind to share with us a little bit about your journey.
Okay, awesome. So, hi everyone. Like you said, I'm the Spicy Investor, so I'm really excited to be here. Essentially today, I just really want to get into some real talk about how to grow your money the smart way, understanding, like, especially as a dancer in the industry, like, what do we do with our money? Like we touch a lot of us have the opportunity to touch so much money. And it's fast money for the most part. So it's kind of difficult. Like, what do we do with that money, even if you're just starting out? And it really just comes down to understanding what is financial literacy. And so much goes into it financial literacy, index funds, all those magical accounts that you've heard of, like Roth IRAs. They can really change your future.
Yeah. And yeah, there's sort of, I view it as sort of three parts with money. There's the ability to call it in, and like you said, you touching so much money, in a period of dancing. I remember specifically, I was probably like 5, 6 years in, and I was, stacking my money and saving it the traditional way. Well, I had a house
Mhm.
that was offsetting the interest there, but still, I'd hear people talking about investing and I felt like my brain was just an egg getting scrambled, and I'd be like, what
Yeah.
mean? Like, what is investing, and people would say things like, oh, you can invest, shares and business and
Yeah.
properties. And it just felt like too big, too much. So before we get into that, you mentioned that you had quite
Mhm.
an expensive lesson and wake up call that
I
got you
did.
focused. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, being in the industry, so this happens during COVID times, and I was a dancer before COVID, but during COVID, my club had shut down, so I'm like, oh crap, like, I want to make some money, but I want to make fast money. And side note, this is before I became an investor, right? So I got into something you all probably know about, day trading.
Hmm.
Or maybe some people know about it, but essentially day trading, you buy low, you sell high, just really trying to make that fast money, but it's not investing, it's gambling. I was really making a lot of money till I wasn't.
Right.
I don't get into specifics, but it was very embarrassing at the time, and sometimes it still is embarrassing, but I lost six figures.
Right. Wow.
I
God.
lost a really scary amount of money,
Hmm.
but I also made money, so I was on top of the world. I thought I was invincible, but the house always wins when it comes to gambling.
Yes. Yeah.
And I really advocate against day trading now, and I lost pretty close to six figures. I That was really my wake up call. It was a really unfortunate, expensive wake up call. I don't wish upon anyone, but that was the moment where I'm like, I got out of a depression because of it. I'm like, okay, you know what? It
Hmm.
is what it is. What do I do with this? Like, what do I do? How do I make my money back? And I'm like, you know what? My club is opening back up soon. It was still COVID. It's opening back up. Let me go back to what I feel I'm really good at,
Yeah.
sales, especially in our industry. Like, I really thrive. So I went back to the club with a completely different mindset. And I'm like, you know what? I want to be a real investor. Looking back, even if you're investing $100 a month, you are a real investor. It's not about the dollar amount. We're all real investors as long as we're investing whatever within our budgets. But back then, I'm like, I want to be a real investor. I want to invest thousands of dollars. So yeah, long story short, I went back into the club, but with a different mindset of like, okay, everything I make every night, I'm going to be investing. I'm going to learn how to invest properly, which is, we're going to get into it, but it's long-term investing. So
Mm.
that was my wake-up call, and that's how I kind of opened my eyes to stepping away from what I view as gambling and really respecting my hard work and the money I make differently.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for sharing. And that would have been particularly scary, I imagine, like in those
Terrible.
uncertain times as well, like just layered on top of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes those expensive lessons are like, right, time
Yeah.
to get my shit together. So yeah, good on you. And I mean, I'm so curious about mindsets. Like, if you could
Hmm.
describe the difference between like pre that expensive lesson and then after that expensive lesson, how would you describe like the difference in your mindset going into work?
I I think before this lesson, I really had a scarcity mindset when it came to money. And
Mhm.
that's why I was gambling it. And
Mm,
I feel like gambling at least like in the market with day trading or options, if you guys are familiar with those terms, some of you may, it's a self-sabotage. It's not respecting your hard work, it's not respecting your money, and I feel like I had that scarcity mindset where I just wanted to flip my money. And
mhm,
now looking back, I'm a completely different person. I respect myself and my hard work as a sex worker enough to do right with my money. So
mhm.
it's like looking at two completely different people when it comes to viewing money and how I mean I like to use the word like how I respect my money.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's such a difference when your money has like a home to go to. It's sort of like,
Yeah, value.
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, there's like the calling in the money, then being able to hold it. Just this patch before the next bit, which is what do I do with it? Because sometimes we
Yeah.
can call it in and just let it slip through our fingers, whether it's through like shopping or, just whatever it is, or like in your case, like
Yeah.
day trading, essentially gambling,
Yeah.
just these quick like dopamine hit things. Because money,
Yes.
money does sort of replicate dopamine in so many ways as well.
Money
Like,
is a drug.
yeah, totally. Oh
Use
my,
it safely.
yes, totally. That is such a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like the next step, which is hang on, not just holding it, but hang on, how about I like grow this and allocate it to places that it has, it can work.
Purpose.
Yeah, it has purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where there's um a few different terminologies, so we'll just stay away from, there's different things in Australia, and obviously there's
Yeah.
always going to be in America as well. Super or for 401k, like there's some benefits in putting your money there, but the thing that a lot of like for me in my journey, I felt safe with property because um
Yeah.
it's tangible, and I don't know, I just have special interest in that. But I never could quite wrap my head around investing until
Hmm.
more recent years, like I'm 40 now and I've been in industry for quite some time. So, I wasn't savvy and I'm still learning. And um, obviously, if we could go back in time and do things differently,
Oh,
we
I
probably all
know.
would. Yeah. But
Yeah.
there's no better time than today. And just to like start, like you said, getting that financial literacy and just opening those pathways in your brain to be like, cool, I'm open to, different ways of treating my money and allocating, and respecting money. So could you,
Yeah.
if you would just let us in on a little bit of your journey around investing,
Mhm.
yeah, just why it's such a fantastic thing.
Yeah, I can't recall who said this quote, but it's something that really stuck with me when I would feel bad about not starting sooner. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's a really common thing I hear a lot of ladies in the industry talk about that have spoken to me about wanting to invest, like, oh, I wish I started sooner. It just sounded so scary or so complicated, but like The quote is, the first best time to have started was yesterday, but the next best time to start is now, like right now.
Awesome.
So like I really kept that in my head and I'm like, okay, I want to be financially literate. I want to understand what is financial literacy and why does it matter? But to start simple, basically, financial literacy, it's just knowing how to manage your money, how to save it, how to grow it, and ultimately how to use it wisely. And as I say, respect it. Most of us really weren't taught this in school also. So it doesn't mean we can't learn it now. And the earlier you start, the better. So I was like, how do I become that? Do you want me to like kind of jump into different types of like accounts? I know it's a little different in Australia, like the names, but
Yeah, we can. Yeah, for those that are interested, that I'll just do a little framing with this. Like, with property, for example, it can also be daunting because it's like I need to save such a large amount and it's such a big decision. But the good thing with investing is you can just start where you're at. And then, yeah, so like a little bit around maybe the strategy, the long game, and yeah, just the things that interest you basically of like your decision. I want to learn about investing and then sort of what unfolded from there for you.
yeah, so with me investing, I was never really interested in real estate. I wanted something that felt easy that I can just look at from my phone that I didn't feel so attached to. That was my mindset in the beginning, right? Looking back now, I'm so attached to my investment portfolio, just as someone may be attached to real estate. Both are excellent ways to invest, but at least when it comes to the stock market, and I started learning, I was self-taught, by the way. I would just do my research online and I'd figure out like, okay, how do I invest? Like, I know I have to open up an investment account, right? So I know they're gonna have different names, but essentially, I opened up my very first investment account, and I learned the safest, most foolproof way to invest was to invest inside of an index fund. And I know that might be a universal term.
It is, yeah.
Um, yeah, index funds, they're the best way to invest. In the beginning, I didn't want to invest into individual companies. So when I say individual companies, I mean like investing in Google, Amazon, you know, individual companies like that. Like every company you know of, they're most likely in the US stock market. So I'm like, okay, how do I make this really safe? Because I don't know how to stock pick. So
Mhm.
that's why I started learning about index funds. And essentially, like an index fund really is, it gives you pieces of hundreds of companies at once. You can think of it like a big basket of stocks. So it's not an individual company. And I love thinking about that. I'm like, okay, that's what I want to invest in because I don't want all my eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So it's just like it really instantly diversifies you, which means less risk, less drama. And after, having lost so much money, that's what I wanted. So my first order of business really was building a substantial foundation inside of an index fund. There's so many out there, there's hundreds, but I picked my favorite index fund. I don't know if you want me to share it on here,
Yeah, please.
but it's a very well-known index fund. It's called VOO or VOO is the name of it. It's not the only one out there, but it is one of the more popular ones amongst long-term investors, myself included. So that's the one I picked. That's the one I stuck to. 5 years later, pretty much, I'm still investing into VOO.
Mhm.
And I just found it to be one of the easiest, like headache-free ways to invest because I was just so scared to invest individually into companies in the beginning. At this point of my journey, I do invest individually into companies as well, but index funds have always been the bulk of my portfolio. So
Mhm.
that's really how I got started. I'm like, let me pick one index fund and let me grow it. And I really gave myself a goal of how much I wanted to invest inside of that index fund, that foundation I built for myself before stock picking, before getting a little risky or diversifying. So that was the beginning. That's how I kind of got into it.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, index funds, yeah, they're like a broad spectrum of all different industries.
Yes.
So basically, yeah,
Yeah.
if some are strong and some, aren't going so well, is kind of leveled out, and it's like a low risk, but lower reward than say stock picking, where, if you hit it, it's going to be, you're going to ride that sort of jump. So the index funds,
Hmm.
with actually opening an account, there's different ways, and maybe it's different in America as well. You can use like online brokers or different platforms here. You
Yes.
might see a financial advisor to help you set up your actual fund. How did you find actually setting up, sorry, not fund, how did you find actually setting up your account?
Yeah, so I'm not one to advertise, like, get a financial advisor, because at the end of the day, they're not free. Um, Financial advisors, they do take a percentage of your portfolio, and over time, even 1%, it's a lot of money,
Mhm.
over hopefully decades of you investing. So I wanted to do it on my own, which you can. So at least here in the States, every major bank has its own investing platform. I personally use Chase Bank, their platform. So it was really just as easy as looking up onto their website. You fill out an online application. It takes like 5 minutes, 1 to 2 business days. Your investment platform is open, your investment account. I mean. So it was just that easy. You don't have to talk to anyone from the bank. You don't have to go into the bank. It's just filling out an online application, and that applies to any platform you use as well when it comes to opening up your first investment account.
Hmm. And was there any like minimum required, or is it, you can literally do as little or as much as you like?
No, that's the best part. I can't speak for every platform at least, but you can start as little as $10 a month
Yeah.
investing. I feel like there's a common misconception that people think like, oh, I don't make enough money right now. It's
Mm.
not going to matter. Those small contributions, they really go a long way. And I really think it comes down to building the habit for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because when I started investing, I wasn't making nearly as much as I made towards the end of my dancer career. I was investing maybe $100 a week. And looking back, I know that's still like a very amazing amount of money. But again, I was, in the industry, and that's what I was making at the beginning of my journey. And now looking back, I was like, wow, I was investing $100 a week, and I was so proud of myself.
Yeah.
So you don't need to start with any certain amount. It's really about building that habit. And, fast forward
Yeah.
like 5 years, and then I was investing, 10 grand or more a month.
Hmm.
But it's because I built that habit with that $100 a week. And that
Yes.
$100 a week, it's still there and it's still being invested. It's still compounding
Yes.
all that time. So you could start with as little as $10. You don't need a certain amount to start. Maybe some platforms are different, but all the platforms I know of, the main ones here in the States, they don't require a minimum investing amount.
Yeah, yeah. And so with
Mm-hmm.
this, like we're having this discussion, just sort of getting the awareness out there. It's not advocating anything. It's obviously there's still no guarantees. But
Yeah.
it is, historically a very safe way to park your money
Yes.
and, grow. So I'd love to hear from you about just the, as Warren Buffett calls it, like the eighth wonder of the world, the compound effect that that has on money. And maybe I know that you're quite transparent with your own, fund situation, but just like how that can grow for you and the difference between just saving money and then like actually allowing it to compound over time.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen so many like takes from Warren Buffett, and it's so funny. I call him Daddy Buffett because come on now. I love watching him, and I've learned so much about him, and what he's about, which is investing for the long run, the long term. And like you said, compound interest, it's the eighth wonder of the world. It truly is. For example, like referring back to investing in index funds, they are, like you said, really safe and foolproof. They return on average, I think, 7 to 10% annually over
Mhm.
long term. So that's why I think they're so great for beginners. You can invest manually, or you can invest like you can automate your investments. So that's why I really I advocate for them, but essentially with compound interest, I can give you kind of like a little example
Mhm.
to visualize it.
Yeah.
But, one I like to talk about a lot is if you invest $1,000 at 10% annual return and you never add another penny, after 10 years, you'd have $2,600. After 20 years, you'd have $6,700, so on and so forth.
Mm.
All from that $1,000. And
Sorry,
that's
it wasn't
considering if
per
you
year.
never put another penny. Exactly, because it compounds and then that total amount compounds and compounds. So, compounding interest, it's really your money working for you. People say, make sure your money works overnight or you're never going to escape the rat race. This is what that is.
Yes. Yes, it is so like you can hear those things and be like, but how? And it's like it is just
Yeah.
that practice of like, having a system set up. Like it doesn't need to be this huge complicated thing, it can be just as simple as, where you're at and creating that habit and then knowing that, it's going to be growing, compounding. So the interest basically that is generated off the amount um, goes back in to
It
your,
grows on its own,
yeah.
without you lifting a finger. The only thing that you need to do is put in the hard work to make your money, how you make your money,
Mhm,
and put in the discipline and put that discipline to work by making sure you invest weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever works for you.
mhm,
And, make sure you buy into a standard low cost index fund and that's it. You don't have to do anything else. That's it. So it's the easiest way, and they say the laziest investors are the best ones, and that's where that comes from. Being just like a lazy investor, just investing in boring index funds.
mhm.
Um, People love to call them boring because it's not quick money. This is the long game. If
Yeah.
you're expecting to make money out of investing, in the next day, the next year, this isn't for you. This is really like the long game as in investing 5, 10, 15, 20 years, like decades, to really see the true power of that compounding interest.
If you are someone, excuse me, out there listening that's like, okay, so this sounds interesting, and I want to learn a bit more. I just want to recommend right here. It's a simple Google. You can Google compound interest calculator, and you can
Oh yeah,
yeah, you can literally plug
that's my
in
favorite.
like
Yeah.
say 1,000, it will calculate for you. So $1,000, say monthly, over 10 years, over 20 years. It starts getting really interesting when you look at over 30, 40 years. Especially if you're young, at those decades, the graph just, once those figures reach a certain tipping point, the
It's
amount that's
crazy.
compounding and coming back in, like you're going to reach the millions by simply being that lazy investor, just going, oh, I'll set that up and put that across and not really think about it again. Um, and so it's got the other added benefit if you're someone that's like, cash is there, money is there, I'm going to spend it. It's out of sight, out of mind, and it's working for you.
Yeah.
So that's like another added benefit as well.
You'll sleep so peacefully at night once you know that your money is properly invested and it's working for you. I like to say, like, especially in the beginning when I was like, learning discipline when it comes to money, respecting my money, I'm like, okay, anything I put into my investment account, it's like a black hole that does not exist.
Mhm.
That's being invested. And that's why I always say, the rule of thumb, having a savings account or an emergency savings account alongside investing and becoming an investor is, it gives you even more added protection and reassurance because a lot of girls tell me like, okay, what if I invest, but like I have an emergency and I really need that money? Like, what do I do? I'm like, well, that's why I recommend building up an emergency savings account. So when life does its thing and it throws something your way, which it loves to do
Mhm.
unexpectedly, you don't even have to, ideally, you don't have to even think about touching your investments because look, you have 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a high yield savings account for those moments. So a lot of people are scared to invest. They understand what investing is, but they're scared to do it because they're like, what if, what if, what if? Like my
Mhm.
car or, I can't work. And that's why I always recommend perfect side by side would be having that savings account to allow that compound interest to just do its thing with your investment account.
Yeah. And you don't kind of blur the lines and, like
Mhm.
start sort of, oh, I'll just dip in here or there. It's like having that emergency fund. It's completely separate. The lines are,
Yeah,
the
it's a
boundaries.
completely separate account. Yeah. It's like any other, instead of having a savings account with a bank where you're going to get, at least here in the States, maybe it's the same over there, but 0.01% on your money in a generic savings account. There's amazing high yield savings accounts that are, it fluctuates, interest rates change, but upwards of 4%, like
Mhm.
free money.
Yeah.
It's not invested, your money's sitting there in a savings account, but you're earning interest monthly.
Yeah.
So I love growing my high yield savings account just to feel safe.
Yes. And so I just wanted to ask you, like, I know, before we wrap up, and I really appreciate your time, there's, a bit of volatility at the moment, obviously over in the US, and that has a big knock-on effect with the rest of the
Yeah.
world. And I just want to also preface this with, yes, there's risks in everything. And, same with property, like, even though it felt safer for me, I just want to say, like, it has its ups and downs, and it over time is similar, 7 to 10%. And your money can double when it's around 7 to 10%
Yeah.
in 10 years as well, which is fantastic. But when we first bought our first property, it lost 100K. The market went right down. And
Yeah.
we only would have lost that money if we sold in that time. And now,
Exactly.
it's seen like 30+% growth each year for the last couple of years, which is amazing. But it's not always
Yeah.
like that. And so, like you mentioned, the long game, it's kind of, just a different avenue. And so with this volatility, yeah, I just wanted to ask you because I see on your Instagram, I find it's, the one thing that so stood out to me. I love
Yeah.
the post. It's like you have a little graph of your time frame of, say, the last
Which
maybe
one?
5 years, where you're mapping out every time you hit your new 100K. And
Oh, yes, yes. I
yeah,
love that little graph.
yeah, that's so
Yeah.
inspiring. So, yeah, if you could just wrap up maybe with like a little bit about the volatility, maybe your mindset around that,
Yeah.
then your actual journey and like where you're at, it's so inspiring.
Yeah. Like you were talking about, like just trusting the stock market. I know a lot of people are scared, and I think that's more comes from like a lack of education, but that's why we're here to try to educate everyone. But one of the biggest fears people have about investing in the stock market, it's because it goes up and down. And yeah, it does. Of course it does, and that's normal. Just like you mentioned in real estate, it's supposed to do that. The market has dips, the market has crashes, the market has corrections, but it also recovers and grows and reaches all-time highs very periodically. When you hear the market is crashing, I know that's scary, and a lot of people freak out when they hear market crash. That's a buying opportunity. The market, it's unpredictable in the short term, but it's incredibly reliable in the long term. And that's why I go back to saying, when I say, if you're investing, it's for the long game. I don't know what the stock market's going to do this year. I don't know what it's going to do tomorrow. It can crash again, or it can continue to recover like it did today, actually.
Yeah.
Um, like it definitely did today, but all I care is about, that on average 7 to 10% annual returns. But that's when you invest long term, like I said, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And it's like the historical truth. The market has gone through wars, recessions, pandemics, crashes, and it still averages 7 to 10% returns per year. Just kind of like an example for you guys. Like if you've invested during the 2008 market crash, maybe some people are too young or some people are aware of the 2008 recession and crash, and you just held your money. By 2020, you would have more than doubled your money. So that's kind of looking back at such a tragic time in our economy, one of many, right? 2008. But if you just like hold on and you don't sell your investments, you just continue to prove to yourself that the market always recuperates. You can't panic when the market drops. You gotta just stick to your plan.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting.
Hmm.
It's almost counterintuitive. Same with, housing when it drops and it's like you couldn't give a house away. Everyone's like, oh, like
Yeah,
but they're on sale, and same with stocks. Everyone's freaking out, like, oh, like that, like it's got, the plague or something. And it's like, well, actually, if you just keep on going, like, invest when it's low, invest when it's high. Yeah, and
exactly.
I saw you share the other day, like, if it feels boring, good, you're doing it well or something like that.
Yeah.
So thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Um,
Oh,
do you
thank
have
you for
any
having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Do you have any last thoughts that you want to share? And also, where can people find you?
Yeah, so to find me, I'm only on Instagram right now. My username is The Spicy Investor, and on there I do offer one-on-one sessions, hour-long sessions. A lot of people love to use those sessions, for investing in finance. Really, it's just having like the basic fundamental understanding and education on really what we went over today, like how to get started, like where do I open up an investment account? What do I buy? Like how do I budget? Those are a few of the many things I talk about during my one-on-one sessions. So if you're ever interested, you can go ahead and DM me and we could talk about, how to get you booked with that. And that's how you would reach me. And I guess like, a little more about me is, a lot of people find inspiration out of my page and I love that. But I also like I didn't wake up one day and have what I have right now invested or where I am financially, like with my growth or my net worth growth. I started with losing six figures. And I hope none of you have to go through that, but I started from scratch after losing everything. I said, you know what? I'm going to teach myself how to invest. I went on Google. What is investing? I remember that's something I literally typed, what is an investor? Like these are things I didn't know. And I really started with my first dollar and now I'm here, 5 years later.
Mhm.
Also thanks to like not only like my dedication with it, but amazing clients I had in the industry. But I am where I am now because I didn't care. I started with my first dollar and I knew I would make it.
Mhm.
So my best piece of advice is like you can't look at others' progress or what other people have and feel like, oh, how am I going to ever get there?
Mhm.
Maybe if anyone ever feels that way looking at my page, like I just want to remind everyone I started from zero and I built the account. So if I did it, anyone could do it.
Yeah, thank you. And I saw on your last thing you're edging back towards before the recent little dip around 800 US dollar 800,000, sorry, 800K US.
Yes, I'm so close. I'm so close.
Stone, and it's so inspiring because you're quite young and it's self-taught. And I
Yeah.
love you mentioned that with the Google, like there are no silly questions. It's like it's a good thing asking from scratch because that
Yeah.
curiosity is what leads you to actually so many bigger things. Like there's literally no silly questions, no, good or bad place to begin. And for
Yeah.
everyone listening, I'm going to pop a link in the notes. So give the Spicy Investor a follow. Her content is amazing,
Yeah.
it's inspiring, it's relatable. Also check out her courses. Because it's just such a great thing to educate yourself on. So
Yeah.
thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for
Thank you
being
so
here.
much.